It has been called the father of rivers. Witness the most fascinating and untold story of Sindhu, the river Indus. Come join us on an epic journey through 11,000 years of history, geography, and culture. Come travel with us. 2,000 miles with mighty Indus.
Hey guys, welcome back to our series overview of Game of Thrones. I'm Neha.
I'm Hatim.
And I'm Samir.
So, the epic fantasy drama Game of Thrones has finally come to an end after 8 seasons and 73 episodes. It was such a huge phenomenon all over the world, and what do you think makes it so?
So I think the success for me is not that you have this X number of views or so many people know about the show or watch the show. It's the cultural phenomena that this show has created. So it's the number of people who've named their kids after the show. It's the common language the show has created. It's the ability to go to any part of the world and speak about the show and people understanding and appreciating it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we've got memes, we've got merchandise, we've got role-playing, we've got Comic-Cons. This is a big, big deal all over the world.
And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry at the end of the day. And HBO as a sort of network has been resuscitated by Game of Thrones. And if you look back, I was reading the other day that when season 1 came out, the pilot episode was rejected.
Yes.
Because it was that bad, and they had to rewrite the whole thing, readjust the whole thing. And I can't imagine how that rewriting process has shaped the way how the entire series has been, created for us. It's so immaculate, it's so well
definitely.
crafted.
They've put in a lot of work into this show, and we need to give a shout out to the production and the visual effects and the makeup and the costumes. They've all been so brilliant because you can like the story, where the story went, or you can contradict with who ended up on the Iron Throne, but the fact that it was all done beautifully, you can't deny that.
And one thing to add to that, I would say that as you see the seasons successively, it only gets better. So they've learned from the past season and improving the production value and improving some of the costumes and the sets, and as well as the delivery of dialogues. It only gets better as you go along the seasons.
And you can sort of note that as you go along that not only the production value has improved, but also they've even, I think it's paved the way for bigger seasons which are existing right now. Westworld, for example, that model came from Game of Thrones. That they not only adopted a very large-scale story, engaged in a lot of world building, but it also deals with the micro-level singular characters, their stories, their nuances, and how they went along. So I think it has not only set a wave of large-scale seasons which we're experiencing right now, but it's also created a model for channels to follow.
Definitely, it has raised our expectations for sure of what we expect from TV. And I mean, we must give credit where it's due. This show wouldn't have been possible without George R.R. Martin. What a genius man he is.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think after Tolkien, his work is probably one of the finest of modern fantasy in these days. So, and what makes it so compelling, in my opinion, is how all of his characters are not really black or white. There's no ultimate good. There's no ultimate evil. There are shades of gray in there, and that makes for very good drama. What do you think about that?
Because I think that makes it more relatable. I think the real world does not comprise of the extreme good or the extreme evil. Even if you look at characters like Ned Stark, which we've seen as, the epitome of goodness in Game of Thrones, he was a deeply flawed man.
Yes.
And those flaws led to his untimely death at the end of the day. But you can sympathize with these characters. You can find yourselves in these characters and their motivations, and you can see what drives them to do these good or extremely evil things. Characters like Ramsay Bolton, like Joffrey Baratheon, these were extremely evil people, but their motivations were something which were very common.
Very tangible motivations.
Exactly.
I think a big challenge in fiction in general is, so when you have something like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, how can you create a world of fantasy but characters that are so relatable that you relate to and feel like they represent you in some ways. And I think another challenge that was amazingly done in this show was, how do you create such a complex world with so many characters and so many plots, but then keep the audience entertained to the point where you want to follow and understand each storyline.
Definitely. And while we're talking about storylines, I have to ask, we've got 8 seasons, we've got 73 episodes. What for you were the best and the worst moments of Game of Thrones?
I think the best moment was, even though I love every single season up till season 5, but when the episode of Hardhome, when Jon Snow goes to convince the wildlings, that brings everything into perspective. Because we've been hearing about the White Walkers, we've been hearing about the Army of the Dead, and now you've seen them in action, and you've seen the sort of catastrophe that they can cause only in just a few mere seconds. They wiped out an entire town of wildlings, and they rose up together, and I think that was the finality of that moment.
It was done very well as well. I mean, kudos to Miguel Sapochnik, the director. He did an amazing job. What about you?
So I would separate your question to shock value and production value. So the best in terms of, I think this show has accustomed us to, absorbing a lot of shock. So my favorite one, I would say, is Ned Stark's death over there, because it's something nobody expected. And the next episode, you start the episode, there's something that must have happened and he's come back, but he does not come back. So I think that's, I would say, was amazing in shock value. And production value, I would say, when Daenerys for the first time crosses the wall with Jon, I think just so beautifully shot and so majestic. I think that's what I really, really liked about the production of it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't think Mia said this, but I absolutely loved the Red Wedding. I mean, it tore my heart out. I cried, I swore, I shouted, but it was all worth it. Looking back, that is the one moment.
Because it's episodes like the Red Wedding that remind us that it is Game of Thrones.
And that wasn't necessarily a big set piece. It wasn't the Battle of Bastards. It wasn't, one of the big battles. It was just this family being slaughtered at a wedding, and it was heartbreaking.
And it's a family that you've been following since the first season. You've empathized with them.
And what becomes challenging is, no matter which character you start, developing an affinity to, you always know the back of your mind, he's going to go away or she's going to go away.
Exactly.
I mean, Jon Snow's death really, blew me away.
Or Oberyn Martell in season 4. That was insane.
Season 4 for me is one of the best seasons. I mean, I cannot, sing enough praises of Peter Dinklage's performance in the trial. That Tyrion's trial for me has to be one of the best acting pieces that has been ever done on TV.
And also, I think it's a testament.
He won an Emmy for that too.
He did actually, and I think it's a testament to Peter Dinklage's acting, that even in a show as grand and massive as Game of Thrones, in which there are hundreds of actors, it's an entire ensemble cast, and there's still Peter Dinklage is able to maintain that presence. Every single word has meaning, has weight, and he conveys it so well that you know that this guy is a true sort of a kingmaker in that sense.
And a set of actors who weren't famous before the show. I think there needs to be a shout out to that, because a lot of these characters were built because of Game of Thrones, and it's not easy, I guess, writing out a season 1 and thinking about all these new people and bringing them together and then taking a bet on them. But they developed into amazing characters and did so well.
Definitely. And now HBO has announced a set of prequels for Game of Thrones. And we know that the first one that will star Naomi Watts and a few of the alumni of Harry Potter and Narnia will be set thousands of years before Game of Thrones. So are you looking forward to that?
I'm going to watch it regardless, but there is a sort of teasing sensation at the back of my head that they can mess it up really badly, because that's what happened with prequels. Like, you look at The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings had such rich lore, and The Hobbit is like a 200-page book that's been stretched out into 3 very long and very boring movies. So I hope they do a good job of it.
I mean, the challenge is always like when you go too commercial, which is, you know, there's an audience for it. So now the new books that are going to come out, you know, people are going to read those books.
Absolutely.
And the prequels as well. You could probably stretch it on for years and years, knowing that people are going to watch it, and then it loses the quality.
Whether you liked how the show ended or you hated it, you cannot deny that it has been a huge part of our lives for the past 10 years. But that's it for now. Our watch has ended.
It has been worshipped as a god for thousands of years.